Today sucks. Normally I write these intros with either a little bit of remembered knowledge or completely blind, but I can assure you, based on my knowledge of these games, that today just sucks. I've been through a wide variety of action sports games now, so many that I pretty much know what works and what doesn't. I've seen almost everything. Almost. This is one of those situations where I can't really say anything to prepare myself or any of you for what's ahead, so today we're going to take a look at the Rocket Power games. Thank you to everybody who sticks around, thank you if you're new, and if you're one of the newcomers, then I'm sorry in advance. Let's get started. Rocket Power Team Rocket Rescue, developed by Dark Black and published by THQ in 2001, is a variety action sports game based on the nostalgic Nickelodeon series Rocket Power. I loved Rocket Power as a kid. As both a cartoonist and a fan of action sports, I appreciate a lot of what it tried to do. It intermingled a lot of otherwise divided action sports, and it introduced a ton of kids to ideas that they otherwise might have ignored. It makes sense that it would get a video game, especially since the early 2000s were a golden age for Nickelodeon video games and skateboarding games, but I don't think anybody could have expected this. If you don't recognize Dark Black, they're responsible for MTV Sports Skateboarding, featuring Andy McDonald. I mean, they're literally only responsible for that. That is the only other game they made in their entire history as a development studio. But I do need to point out that the lead programmer on this game had absolutely no connection to that game, so we still have a tremendous amount of inexperience here. The story mode is pretty true to Rocket Power. A megacorp is looking to put rocket boards out of business, so Team Rocket enters the Oceanside contest to keep it alive. The actual career as it plays out is a butchered and watered down version of something we love. Go from map to map, completing a single goal to move on. Not multiple goals, one, singular. I can't even tell you how much I hate that. It's all divided and spread across multiple different action sports, including snowboarding, skateboarding, inline, BMX, and whatever. Since it's alternating, there's no real way to get comfortable with any one game type, but they all play very similarly. There are familiar goals like slalom, collecting objects, getting score, and other stuff, but doing it one goal at a time was the sickle that killed the crop field. Less maps, less game types, multiple goals per map. That's the way to get it done. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The gameplay is, in the nicest way possible, worse than garbage. Not all skateboard madness bad, not extremely goofy skateboarding bad in some places, but a close third place. All of the vehicles have the same controls. Some of it is traditional. Tricks mapped to the base buttons, spin mapped to bumper. There's no manual, so no huge combos. The grind is there, but it doesn't have any balance or anything like that. Also, the grind is mapped to the left face button instead of the top, which means half of the tricks are mapped to the grind button. You might be wondering, what does the top button do then? Well, in the most straightforward words I can think of, it essentially breaks the game for a second. The top face button activates special mode. Instead of doing special tricks, you literally just freeze in the air for a temporary period, which allows you to spam as many tricks as possible. It's like those moments in Thug Pro where you accidentally get stuck in a wall during a boost plant, but way more annoying and way less helpful. Since the majority of goals aren't score-based, this is really only a novelty you'll get to use a couple of times. It looks like shit, it doesn't serve a major practical purpose, and it can be flat interruptive. You know what else is interruptive though? The movement. The most basic principle. The movement in this game is absolutely garbage. Holding forward does slow movement. Holding ollie does fast movement. Turning is really fucking slippery and worse than Airblade, and it either feels like an ice level or it feels so stiff that it's hard to maneuver, with no in between. The snowboarding particularly feels terrible. It's worse than the Phoenix Games snowboarding and skiing games somehow. It's extremely stiff. In Dark Black's position, I would have opted to just make a skateboarding game, because every other part of this is unforgivably terrible. It feels really bad, and that in turn means my experience came to an end really fast. The real cherry on this anthrax cake is the severe lack of tricks. The variety is so small. There are multiple available vehicles, right? So the issue here becomes too much quantity, not enough quality. We don't need every possible action sport crammed into a tuna can, we need one good cohesive game based on one sport. In Dark Black's case, it should have been skateboarding. If this were an improved Andy Max skateboarding, it would actually be a half-decent game. I made mention that when MTV Sports Skateboarding worked, it worked really well. That was the foundation laid out to make this better. But instead it feels like they essentially started from scratch, and in turn they lost 90% of the gameplay. When a predecessor game has flaws, we call it quirks of the precursor syndrome. In this case, this is the second game made by this engine. These mistakes, these removals, are unforgivable, but not because this is by all means an engine successor. That doesn't necessarily mean it's made by the same people. Aside from Richard Beston, only 3 of the artists came over from MTV Sports Skateboarding, and a whopping 0 programmers and anybody else came over. Only 9 people worked on this game, and the lead programmer, Gary James Gray, is most well known for programming a few cricket games and a whole boatload of shovelware, including the horrific Miami Vice game, as well as a few Midas-published first-person shooters, like the legendary So Bad It's Good masterpiece, Skyscraper. This is a situation to be forever used as an example. Just being made by the same studio doesn't even mean anything. Studios change. People come and go. People are given different assignments. Studio and publisher are not where you find style. If you want to know why things are the way they are, learn more about the developers themselves. In this case, they had no experience with the subject, but they had all of the tools and plenty of experience from other places. Quirks of the precursor, nothing. This is just made terribly. It feels worse than it looks, somehow. Visually, the character models don't look bad, but everything else does. The FMV is low frame rate, which doesn't make sense because it's a fucking FMV. The levels are tiny and mostly empty. The tricks look okay, but there are so few of them that it doesn't matter. The menu and art looks like shit, it just all misses on every mark. I'll point out the obvious and say Rocket Power wasn't the best looking show ever made either, but that had an intentional charm about the weird designs. This is just a very poor translation of that. The audio is equally bad. Bad voice acting, horrible music, annoying sound effects. I want to say more, but there isn't more. It's just bad. I put on music that I actually enjoy, and that helped as much as possible. You know, for as bad as the rest of this experience has been. With all that out of the way, I'll go ahead and give Team Rocket Rescue a rating of 2 out of 10. It gets 1 point for not being skateboard madness. It just barely does enough to be a tiny bit better, but that 1 point is negligible. This is easily one of the worst games I've ever played. It's outright painful. Getting something as simple as movement wrong is unforgivable. This is one of those experiences where I'm glad to have not played it before because I got absolutely nothing out of this. It's just garbage. Play it if you dare, but fair warning, it's a physically and emotionally painful experience. It might not feel as horrible as extremely goofy skateboarding, but it's worse in just about every other aspect. It also had more tricks and levels, so I guess it just marginally earns that second point. Still, I think I'd rather play that for half an hour than this again for another 10 minutes, and that's saying a lot. Next game up, Rocket Power Beach Bandits, developed by Evolution Games and published by THQ in 2002. If you've never heard of Evolution Games before, it's because their gamography only includes a single game ever. This one. Oof. Evolution Games was the brainchild of Justin Green and Sean Hammond, and if you don't recognize Green, that's okay. He doesn't have a tremendous video game record. Sean Hammond, on the other hand, is a very interesting character. After Beach Bandits, he went on to do some programming for ATV Off-Road Fury 3, and later on he was the technical director for Black Site Area 51, and later than that, Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2. In between there is a variety of mid-tier games that aren't anything terrible and also aren't anything remarkable. So we've got some programming competence leading the charge here. I dug really deep to see if I could connect any of this to the other action sports games we've played, but this is really a standalone anomaly. The story mode here is kind of funny and a dirty lie. It's the summertime and Team Rocket is getting ready for an annual surfing contest, but all of the sand from the beach has been stolen. The culprit? This very generic executive character with a gold tooth who's buying all of the property in Ocean Shores. The objective is laid out pretty clearly. Get the sand back, surf the contest. Bet. This game actually plays out in a formula we're kind of familiar with. The idea is still complete goals, but it isn't just an action sports game. It's a collectathon platformer with action sports gameplay and mini-games thrown in. The world space is a segmented open world, so passing through a boundary will take you from one area to another, and more areas are unlocked as you progress. There are some strictly non-skatable objects in areas with no skating signs, but a huge chunk of the objects are skatable. You can switch between vehicles at any time, but first you can only use the skateboard and inline. Later on you get to take control of a few different other things, and there are one-off moments like the mech suit area. As far as platformers go, it's pretty standard. As far as Nickelodeon-based platformers go, it's certainly not as good as the SpongeBob games or Attack of the Twonkies, or even Tak and the Power of Juju, which this game is essentially just a big advertisement for. The gameplay is whatever. It's not great, and it's not bad. It's just very, very average. On the platformer side, you've got your basics like moving, jumping, and an attack, which in this case is the hockey stick. The hockey stick has gun logic. When you're standing still, it'll fire straight. When you're moving, it'll fire within a small cone. The movement on foot feels pretty slow. but I'm sure that's an intentional decision to incentivize players to use vehicles. Speaking of that, vehicles are all the same control scheme, and it's incredibly simple compared to most other games we look at. You have jump mapped to the bottom face button, and holding the left face button propels you forward. Left trigger is grind. Right trigger and the left and right directions are fast spin, but you can spin freely with the analog stick while in the air. Right trigger and the other directions perform some other tricks. The variety of tricks is not huge, even when you count the multiple types of grind. None of it is bad, it actually feels alright, a little floaty at times, but not bad. One thing that pisses me off though, and this is really hard to get past, this entire game centers itself around finally being able to surf. The whole plot only happens because the beach sand is stolen and nobody can surf. You know how much surfing happens in this game? Absolutely fucking none. Zero. The fact that it's the entire focus of the game, the whole reason we're here, and it never happens, is nonsense. There are jet ski races, off-road skateboarding, the hoverboard, bumper cars, all kinds of shit. But the one thing the game actually fucking tells you everybody wants to do is the one thing you never get to do. The thing you started the story for. The thing that we were like, alright, bet, surf the contest. That was a part of the objective. You never get to do any of that. This is unforgivable. It feels like robbery. It insults my intelligence by promising and not delivering. Visually, it again isn't that bad, but it has the same weird problem that The Simpsons skateboarding had. The character models really need some outlines, because that tiny extra detail moves them away from uncanny valley and into cartoon accurate. The character movement and interaction in this game is unsettling all the time, and having to re-trigger cutscenes with unskippable silent moments makes it feel way worse. The level design is the star. The senior level designer, Jamie Lack, worked on Championship Surfing, Sunny Garcia Surfing, and both Destroy All Humans games, so that explains that. He had a pretty good repertoire with water. And it also makes me wish that there was actually some fucking surfing in this game. The sound design is miles ahead of the last game, but still nothing special. I would still rather listen to my own music and just read the dialogue. With all that said, I'll go ahead and give Beach Bandits a 4 out of 10. It's fully functional, it's aggressively average, it could be a 5. It could be, but the promise and lack of surfing kills it. I'm not trying to exaggerate or be dramatic about it. The game promises constantly that you will get to surf once Ocean Shores is saved. It falls out on one of the most important principles in video games. Reward the player. Reward the player with what you promised. If the promise is something as simple and stupid as surfing, then fulfill that stupid promise. A criticism for what I just said is, if it's small and simple, why do you even care? And the answer is, because it's small and simple. It's inexcusable to not have it there. There's no reason to not have it there. The jet ski portions and the off-road skateboarding could have been shelved in favor of surfing, which is what the entire game is actually about. And if the deadline was short, or if the disc was too small, you get rid of some of the other stuff that didn't need to be there. Either that or rewrite the story and don't even mention surfing. It's more or less just a bait and switch for hoverboard gameplay, which realistically is just skateboarding. I don't recommend it. It's just not worth it. Third game of the day, Rocket Power Zero Gravity Zone, developed by Altron Corporation and published by THQ in 2003. The first time I experienced this game, it was on a 4-in-1 Nicktoons Game Boy Advance cartridge. Much as I wanted to play that version, we're gonna play the normal release because I feel like it'll probably be a little less broken. Altron was around for a long time, since 1985. In the early 2000s, they started doing exclusively mobile versions of games, including a bunch of different stuff for Nickelodeon, like the really impressive DS version of Atlantis SquarePants. Last sighting was 2019, so it's probably safe to assume the company is now defunct, which is unfortunate but not uncommon for studios like this now. I couldn't find any credits, so if anybody worked on this game and happens to see this video, hopefully we get a little bit of behind the scenes information like, why was this game made in the first place? The career mode here is standard. Go from map to map completing goals to move on. Damn, that is such a breath of fresh air. There's a mix of snowboarding and skateboarding, but it all uses the same stuff we've seen in games like Dave Mirra and Tony Hawk GBA. The goals are all familiar things too, like high pro and rad score, collect letters, collect objects, trick on some things, touch some things, and there's THPS logic in the form of secret areas with a goal item. This is what I wanted the whole time. Just do this. It works. There are 8 stages, so nothing huge, and that's perfectly fine. The gameplay is the best thing we've seen in this video, but it's certainly not as good as other games of this style. You have ollie and grind mapped to the face buttons, grab and flip mapped to L and R, manual with the up and down directions, wall ride and wally, the bigger ollie. Turning is admittedly loose and kind of weird, but not unmanageable. And there's even a special meter, and each character has a unique special trick. But, and this is a huge but, there are not a lot of tricks. There are single direction tricks, no diagonals, no double tap direction tricks, just single input tricks that are extremely easy to pull off. Special tricks do have special inputs, but there isn't a lot going on. I'll give it credit. This is how you make a game in a tiny amount of time without overshooting. You do what works. I just wish there was a little more of what works here. The real downside to this game is the password system. It doesn't save, so progress is kept by entering passwords. It's not a long password system at all, but this kind of feels outdated for a game from 2003 on the Game Boy Advance. Every other Game Boy Advance game I can think of saves with save files. Considering that, it makes more sense to never release this game standalone at all and just release the 4-in-1 cartridge. But I did say I chose this one because I thought it would be less broken, and I was wrong. The turning was actually fixed in the 4-in-1 cart, which pretty much nullifies any of the additional collision bugs that were introduced there. Play that one instead. Visually, not bad. Very in line with similar games, and I appreciate the heavy outline around the skater model. The hub world is a neat idea too, and it psychologically imprints the locked areas as things worth progressing to see. Where the whole game totally falls short is the level design itself. There's no fluidity to any of it. The pieces are scattered, sometimes nonsensical, and there's a lot of open and empty space where the only obstacle is navigating the isometric cliffs. They're all really cool in theory, but in practice they're just not full enough or coherent enough to be great. The soundtrack is, surprisingly, not that bad. It's a jazzy hip-hop elevator music vibe in line with every other part of this game. It's the best of the soundtracks we've seen so far, so I can actually listen to it for more than a few seconds without shutting it off. Still, it's better with punk rock playing over it. Just listening to your own music is the better way to go for all of these. With all that said, I'll give Zero Gravity Zone a rating of 6 out of 10. It's better. It's sensible. It's a set of ideas that actually work really well with the whole concept of rocket power. Nickelodeon could have milked the rocket power games if they just specifically asked for a bunch of Pro Skater clones. I don't think it's a must-play by any means, but if you were a fan of rocket power way back, I'd say it's the game I'd recommend. It ticks the right boxes for an hour or two. Next up, Rocket Power Dream Scheme, developed by Helix with an E and published by THQ in 2001. Helix did a bunch of licensed handheld stuff. Some Nickelodeon, some Disney, almost exclusively platformer. I'm not sure what to expect anymore because none of these games have been the same thing twice, so we just attack it with an empty mind, assuming it'll probably be a platformer. The story here is that Otto has a nightmare that a dude becomes a villain, so he saves his friends in a dream. Literally all in a dream. Bad story. I'm not gonna pretend it's good, but what is good is the neat little cutscenes. It's presented like the plot of an episode, and it's done really well, so credit where credit's due. The gameplay is a platformer. Surprising. I mean, it is a bog-standard platformer, where you go from point A to point B. On the way, you collect some items to open the next portion of each level until you reach a boss fight where you save somebody. You can switch between vehicles. There are a variety of platforming puzzles. Some platforms are grinds that require you to press the grind button. It's a super simple game, dude. It feels really good, it plays good, but that's hindered by the wonky camera movement to some degree, so it's a mediocre platformer at best. This is a good thing. This video is already really long. I don't want to hang on it too much more, and we still got more to go, so nice to keep things simple for a minute. The visuals are nice. They're probably the best of any of these games so far, but the enemy designs are repetitive. This game does a lot with its level design to try to stay interesting, but it all comes and goes pretty fast. Like I said a minute ago, the cutscenes are the best part of the visuals by far. They're very charming. I think that's credit-worthy enough by itself. The sound design sucks. It's not good. None of these have been really great, so not out of place here. Just listen to anything else. It's a better way to go. All that said, this game gets a 5 out of 10 for being extremely average. Unmemorable, not really anything worth going back to or really even playing if you never have before. You would have to be a hardcore Rocket Power fan to want to play any of these, honestly. Next game up, and I can't believe we're doing this again, Beach Bandits, developed by Helix again, and published by THQ in 2002 for the Game Boy Advance. This is the first time one of these games has a developer working on it a second time, so no excuse for quirks of the precursor syndrome, and definitely no excuse to be worse than the last one. At the very least, it needs to be as average as the last one. The story here is pretty one-to-one with the console counterpart, right down to the promise and lack of surfing. That being said, some of the smaller details were worked around in a way that made more sense, and it all plays out in what can only be described as an open-world 2D platformer, so not a bad way to go. The gameplay is the same as the last one, with a couple of improvements. Now you can switch characters on the fly, and there are weapons to go with that. To boot, the vehicles have their own attacks. The water gun is cool, is a blaster with a charge blast. There are some references to other games like Metroid and Attacking the Power of Juju, because why wouldn't there be? This is actually much better than the console version in terms of gameplay gameplay by like a lot. There's still no surfing, which just doesn't make any fucking sense at all, but the stuff that didn't need to be there is gone, some new stuff is in place of it, and the actual control and feel of the game is much better. Not just than the console counterpart, but also than the last one. There's just one problem. You can 100% the entire thing in 2 hours just playing casually. Not a long game by any means. Not amazing either. It's slightly above average when it's looked at alone, but looking at them all as a group, this is definitely the best Rocket Power game. The visuals are the exact same as last time. Moving on. The soundtrack is better this time. It's groovy and it fits the color palette really well. I'm happy that there isn't much to say because this video's been exhausting and I'm ready to be done with these. So, with all of that out of the way, I'll give Bandits GBA a 6 out of 10. It was good. It was an improvement, but there just isn't enough game there to be like, you've absolutely got to play this. I think the Game Boy Advance had that problem overall. Many of the games on GBA were short, mediocre, and forgivable. It was a platform that, despite having good games, had a ton of shovelware, stood at the forefront of shovelware releases. Hooking people in with simple, portable ideas was the whole goal. Something you could turn on, play fast, and use to kill time between real-life things. At that level, it does what it needs to do. It's not remarkable, but it's good enough. I only really recommend checking it out if you're on some mission to play every platformer on Earth, or if you're a huge Rocket Power fan. Otherwise, it's skippable, just like all of these are. And now that I'm finally done with all that, wait a minute, something's not right. There's a disturbance in the force. Rocket Power Gettin Air, developed by Tiertex and published by THQ for the Game Boy Color in 2001. I'll admit, I almost completely skipped over this. I was done writing the video, I had everything written down, but then, just in an effort to make sure I didn't miss anything, I did a search and found that I missed just one game. This one. And holy shit, are we off to a weird start. For those of you who don't know, Tiertex worked on such classics as Shaq Fu, a bunch of Game Boy ports of Disney games, and the actually kind of impressive Supercross 3D for Atari Jaguar. A giant chunk of their gamography is handheld nothing burgers, so I'm absolutely expecting nothing out of this. No, I take that back. I'm expecting it to be the worst one of the day, probably. I'm no fan of the Game Boy Color. The career is simple. Go scenario to scenario, hitting a score threshold to move on. Not complicated is the name of the whole game here. When you start, you're thrown into a hub world where stopping at any of the available shacks will start one of the scenarios. There's BMX, inline, snowboarding, and in the most incredible turn of events ever, this game actually has surfing. So what the fuck was your excuse, Beach Bandits? A Game Boy Color game did what a PS2 game could not do. That's genuinely crazy. The gameplay is simple. You've got some movement, you go from point A to point B collecting coins and score. It's really just a lot of button spam and jumping at just the right moment. There's no variety, there's not much in the way of game. There's a health bar and hitting obstacles and wiping out makes you lose some health. So you can pick up these juice boxes to get it back, right? But again, there's not a lot of game. That's pretty much it. After all of this, I'm actually really happy about that. It's not great, but it's a satisfying end to a very, very long video. Visually, it's actually really good for a Game Boy Color game. Clean colors and outlines, good artwork, smooth animation, some 3D effects, it's pleasant on the eyes. For such a nothing game, it's got some really interesting visual flair, and I think that deserves credit. Finally, the soundtrack is bad. I hate the Game Boy Color sound chip. It physically hurts my ears and head to expose myself to it for too long. Emulators don't fix it at all. It's very accurate, and that in turn means it sounds like garbled synthesizers and crunches. None of these games have had mind-blowing soundtracks, so it's nothing unexpected, but my god, do I hate the Game Boy Color sound chip. This is the worst one so far. With all of that out of the way, I'll give Gettin Air a rating of 5 out of 10. It's fully functional, it's not broken, it's not exceptionally terrible, it's just not good either. It just is, and that's okay. I think the thing I have to give it credit for the most is the surfing. Beach Bandits has zero excuses. I almost missed this, and I'm glad I didn't because it's nice to end on a note I remember. If you're building a Game Boy Color collection, it's not a bad game to have. If you got 5 minutes to kill, it can be fun for 5 minutes. If you were pissed off that neither of the Beach Bandits games had surfing despite promising surfing the entire time, then you can hit that tiny little Rocket Power surfing itch for a couple of seconds here. It is what it is. Now that I'm finally done with all that, finally, the next video is Guitar Hero spin-offs. I say that not meaning DJ Hero or the band tie-in games. I'm specifically talking about the expansion pack style games. Should be fun. You know what's not fun though? The thing coming right after that. Matter of fact, I'm going to cover something I consider so horribly unfun for the third time because I feel like I'll actually get it right this time. I've got more experience, more comparison, a whole formula, and I know exactly how to convey what I've got in mind now, unlike I did before. So, coming up soon, we're going to to take a look at Silent Hill 3. Again, huge thank you to everybody. New, returning, alien from another planet or dimension, weird hell creatures and otherwise. All of the support means a lot. If you want to help me get better equipment, put out videos faster, a link to tip is in the description. Also, I don't know if you all notice, but I always link to a random unrelated video. I do that just to point out something that I saw that I thought was noteworthy, or something from somebody small, or just a trailer I thought was interesting. Just any random thing I'm checking out, I'll put down there, and I recommend checking those out. Until next time, thank you, and have a nice day.